this week. I opened my laptop and the screen sort of snapped off. And unfortunately, I can't get a new computer till about 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm hopeful that everything stays together. When in doubt, Julie will take over. And I always jokingly say, when in doubt, we can even do it with puppets or mime, because we love talking about scam prevention. We love talking about helping businesses, particularly small businesses. And it's an honor to be here today. I'm Susan Adams Lloyd. I'm CEO and president of Better Business Bureau, serving Minnesota and North Dakota. And first of all, Phil, I need to clarify, do I have about 20 minutes here to present?
Yeah, that's about right.
And then is there time for Q&A after that, or is 20 minutes inclusive? Great.
Yeah,
Cool.
We'll have some Q&A after that.
Perfect. Super. I just want to encourage you to feel free to contact Julie or myself or our team here at Better Business Bureau. And I'm also going to share my screen here, not to be formal, but if, in fact, we're recording, I think it's very helpful sometimes to look at this information, absorb it, and then maybe look at it after the fact, because there's a lot of good stuff here, and we want you to have it in, oh, goodness sakes here. Let's see. And I'm assuming you can all see my screen.
We gotcha. Perfect.
All right, super. Again, my name is Susan Adams Lloyd. I have been with the Better Business Bureau for about 8 years. I actually come from a media background. And in fact, I love talking to groups specifically about what we do at Better Business Bureau, because before working at Better Business Bureau, I had been with companies that had been accredited, but I never really understood that indeed Better Business Bureau exists entirely to help buyers and consumers come together in a very ethical and transactionally pure economy. And in fact, we're not a government agency. We're a nonprofit organization that exists entirely to serve you. So not a single ounce of tax dollars go to us. We survive based on the good tidings of our accredited business members and for generous donors and businesses that sponsor what we do. And a lot of what we do is consumer and business education in forums such as today. So this is why we exist. And we help businesses one-on-one. We help businesses in groups. So if you have some specific questions about anything that you're concerned about in your business relative to scam prevention, we'd love to hear from you and help you. And I would also say, especially to the banks and insurance companies, it's very common for us to come out and do presentations specific to your industry. So again, if you see something here that triggers an idea, don't be afraid to ask Julie or myself in that regard. BBB's mission is to be the leader in advancing marketplace trust. We like to live in that beautiful spot where buyers and sellers trust each other. And we set standards, if you will, for ethical business practices. And I mentioned that as a backdrop to scam preventions, because we're going to define scams here in maybe a way that you haven't thought about before. It's not just the random phone call that comes from the Caribbean or West Africa, where people try to abscond money and steal resources from seniors. In fact, scams can be of all shapes and sizes. And in fact, our accredited business standards are what we use to point to businesses to indeed show who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. And there's a lot of space in between that. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. So Better Business, your business at its best, starts with the premise that people trust you and that consumers can trust you in your work. And rightly so, that you can trust others that you partner, not only those that are on the screen today and in professional associations such as the Lakeville Chamber, but indeed that your vendors and people that you hire to work with, your employees, are indeed people that you can trust. So the 8 standards of trust, when we're talking about scam prevention, we're talking about these 8 standards that we uphold very much in our work. And it's everything from the basic integrity within the organization that you work with and that you work in, to things such as advertising honestly and being responsive and being forthcoming in your endeavors. Every company makes a mistake. There's no company, especially in these crazy times with labor shortages and supply chain issues. Things happen even within BBB. But who can you trust? You can trust those companies that stand forward and stand behind the work and promises that they make. So just a little bit of a side, when we talk about accredited businesses, and this isn't a promotion for BBB, but just so that you know, accredited businesses earn the seal to say that they're following those 8 standards. It's not something that you can just sign up for and receive. You have to prove that you're worthy of that. And again, whether a business is accredited or not, we try to help all businesses uphold those standards within the relative marketplace. So when we talk about scam prevention, we have several tools that we use and that we encourage you to use. These are all free of charge, not just to accredited business members, but indeed available to the public, both to consumers and to businesses. At bbb.org, if you look at bbb.org, it will point you towards businesses. And if you don't have a business profile within bbb.org, I encourage you to do that and to let us know about your business. We obtain that information through the state, the Secretary of State, and we try to keep information up to date on that. But you can find out a lot about what's happening in the marketplace by looking at bbb.org and these other instruments. I'll point to Scam Tracker as an example of one of the free sources that we have. When we hear about scams, and our employees often hear about the scams in the marketplace, sometimes even before the enforcement agencies do. Again, BBB is not an enforcement agency, but we work with all sorts of Dakota County, state of Minnesota enforcement agencies, the FBI, the Federal Trade Commission. And in fact, when we hear word of what's happening in the marketplace, we put that information on Scam Tracker. And you can also report information about a scam if you hear about it on Scam Tracker. And what that essentially does is lets people know what's happening out there so that you can keep an eye and an ear out as well. We do investigations on potential scams, and a lot of what we do at BBB is research in that regard, not only with BBB here locally in Minnesota, but we work with the International Association of Better Business Bureaus. So if you're curious about something that you see or hear, or you're contacted by, let's say, somebody that you just don't, you kind of have that feeling in your gut that something's not right, please feel free to reach out. You can call us, we'll do an investigation, or maybe we have some information already on Scam Tracker to help you. And every time we're hearing about things that are going on in the marketplace, we relay that information to the enforcement agencies so that, in fact, we all have our antennas up on what's happening. So what is a trusted resource? Well, this is Basic 101. And again, I want to start at the very, very basic level. So you see that scam and scam prevention is having an eye and an ear out. I often say that scammers are like magicians. They're really good at what they do. You may be shocked to learn that scammers, the real big scam organizations, are sometimes fronted by large international syndicates. In fact, they have marketing agencies, they have HR departments, and they do a lot of onboarding with their employees. So you might find that shocking, but a lot of scams are extremely sophisticated. They're not just people that are randomly dialing numbers and seeking information from you. They're sometimes very sophisticated. But I'll also tell you that one of the things that we see, and Phil mentioned this earlier, it's not just scammers targeting elderly people. In fact, our research will tell you that more oftentimes, those of us who are online, small businesses, younger people, are actually scammed more often than older people. It's just that older people sometimes have more money put aside. And that's the other tip that I'll leave you today. And that is that it's not the tiny micro businesses that are often targeted. It's not the giant Best Buy kinds, or Target or US Bank, the really big companies, although they are scammed too. It's medium-sized companies, those that have enough assets and resources that, in fact, can go undetected within a system. Either it gets behind a firewall, or we heard of one particular situation where a company was charged a $20,000 cleaning supply invoice, and that was randomly paid because, again, that company, it would be common for them to order $20,000 worth of cleaning supplies. And so sometimes the more medium size companies, if that, let's say, 5 to 10 to $15 million company might be a more prime suspect or target by a scam organization, because that's where they can harvest the most return on that investment. So be sure to do your homework on a business before you sign up with a new vendor. We can help you provide that information and look really carefully, because sometimes as well, we see businesses as disguising themselves. Recently, a RV firm in a small part of town, I think it was Wells, Minnesota, somebody actually stole their website by setting up an entirely different but parallel website. And sure enough, monies were transferred for vehicles within a very short period of time before that was discovered. So heads up on that. Don't just go to a website and look blindly, look very carefully. If you have any questions, call BBB. Bad guys to good guys. What are bad guys? And what are marketplace role models? In fact, bad guys might not be, again, the Russian mafia or the people in the Caribbean posing. It might be a scammy organization that just is in over their head. They promise more they can deliver. They have confusing processes by which they can't deliver goods or services. They're inconsistent with service. They don't return phone calls. Always look to see the granular details of an organization, because it might not just be that they're a scam organization and the fact that they're trying to steal. They might just not be able to deliver on their goods and services. But certainly those that are really out to do harm, malevolent organizations, will take advantage of a situation. And we see a lot of scams where it's sort of a shell game. Remember, I said it's sort of like a magic trick. They pick your pocket by distracting you in some other way. So slow things down. I always say the best tool for scam prevention is to stop, look, and listen very carefully, especially if you feel pressured to make a commitment right away. That's usually one of the first hallmark signs of a scam, is when you get pressure. You need to buy this product or service now. If you don't do it, the discount ends on Friday. Oh, look, it's Friday. You better make that commitment. Slow things down, and you'll be better off by being able to see some of the details that don't add up. Marketplace role models, on the other hand, doesn't mean that they're perfect, but a good company would always have access to their organization from multiple ways. If you get caught in voicemail hell or a phone tree on the phone where you can't get to a live person, that's sometimes, again, one of the signs of a company that is creating poor customer services to hide behind. So good companies lean into issues, they lean into communication, they align actions with their brand and their brand promises, and they use sophisticated business acumen to engage. But bottom line, they're accessible. And I would go more into that at this time, but I want to get to some of the really important stuff and takeaway stuff. We're seeing the top impersonated organizations as being these. And if you buy any supplies off of Amazon, if you pay from some of the vendors like PayPal, heads up there, because again, these scammers are very sophisticated and they can imitate those companies rather plainly, and you can get sucked into pressing send before you even know it. Again, I said most of the targets are medium-sized companies, but most of the impersonated organizations are the big ones. I don't know if you've received a message about from Geek Squad, where if you don't renew your subscription now for your malware, the subscription will disappear immediately. That's because Best Buy is often imitated. Target often imitated. Microsoft, which is sort of ironic, is often imitated. So heads up on this, especially when you see a warning relative to subscriptions. Before you go online, come offline, come off that message, log into your account, look at your subscription to see where it is. Don't just randomly pay online. That might seem kind of obvious, but we hear about stuff every day.
I regularly get Norton antivirus and Sirius XM,
Yep.
both of which are expiring, and I think expired, 10 years ago at least. So I'm just assuming that's a scam email I'm getting.
It's frustrating. I get a lot of DocuSigns. I do sign a lot of documents and contracts online, but the fake DocuSigns are the ones that make me crazy because they're really good imitations. And if you were in a hurry and not processing things in an orderly fashion, or if you have a relatively small business and you don't have separation of duties in such a fact that where someone's looking over someone's shoulder and you have multiple levels of approval, you can push send and find yourself in a world of hurt rather quickly. These are the scams that target business, office supplies, cleaning supplies. You may have heard of the scams where somebody contacts you and says, I received 2 payments for your bill last month. Give me your account number and we'll reimburse you for that. I mean, that's where I hate to say that low tech sometimes is the nice way to go. Send me a check in the mail. But surprisingly, the checks that come back in the mail, sometimes we've seen recently where checks are deposited. And in fact, that's where the problem begins, because once that scammer is in your bank account and the transactions of adding and subtracting funds, we see some very sophisticated scams having to do with overpayments that you should be aware of and go very slow on if you ever receive an information about being overpaid. The sad and tragic one about utility scams, usually it's restaurants, usually it's factories, companies that are reliant on electricity or gas to ensure that they sustain business operations. We hear regularly that indeed people are called, let's say in the middle of a lunch rush, right? A small restaurant saying, you haven't paid your electric bill, give me the information now or we're shutting it down. Again, if you're ever pressured to make a decision on the spot, that's the first sign of a scam. Stop, look, and listen to what's really being said. Xcel Energy or CenterPoint Energy aren't going to call you in the middle of the day and say they're going to turn your electricity or your gas off right now. But in the middle of a busy season or a busy moment, restaurant operator or small business operator might be inclined to act quickly. So slow it down. You probably know business loans, things of that nature. You would have your accountant or your attorney look it over. You would have someone look it over. But unfortunately, the business scams where you're really revealing some of that personal data and information is where you've got to have checks and balances here. Common scam tactics. These are the 6 that are most prevalent. Rushing or pressuring you. Phantom riches are the ones. If you buy this, you have the opportunity to get that. That's where enter to win kinds of things, maybe not so much from business scams, but we see this a lot in the Bitcoin area. When you don't know that much about something, chances are if somebody steps forward as the informed consultant on that or has more knowledge than you, that's where that shell game process starts to happen. And you always needed a trusted source to verify things. If you're ever asked, this might seem obvious, to pay in gift cards or wire money. Now, we sometimes, when we in business, I'm just dealing with something personally right now where I have to wire some money on a big transaction. That's where you should have several steps to ensure that you're insulated and protected. We see tens of thousands of dollars disappear almost every day because people wire money thinking they're doing it properly, and it just doesn't always end well. The reciprocity, hey, I'll help your company if you help mine, and you start doing some trade things. And remember, a castle can be really solid fortress, but if you got a hole in the back of the castle, you got problems. And this is where I caution small businesses most heartily. And that is to say that the scam might not be a random call or email that comes out of the blue. Scammers are real good. They're patient. They're knowledgeable. They're looking for their targets in ways that you don't understand. And once you've let a vendor into your life and you've let I'm going to even say, I hate to say it, an employee into your life, somebody that wants to help you've got to know who you're dealing with, because once inside the castle, a lot of harm can come if you're not careful. And this is where we see, for example, people within circles like, hey, I heard you need some legal help. Well, my son-in-law is a lawyer, and he does a little bit of this work on the side. I'd be glad to introduce you to him. And because it's a friend or a colleague that you know very well, and you let your guard down and that trust, and you don't check that person's credential, either with the state of Minnesota or online, again, stop, look, and listen. Verify who you're working with. Because once that person is in the midst of your vulnerable world, and if you are an operator and not necessarily skilled in all the things that put you in harm's way, you can find yourself in a world of hurt. That's why sometimes having that separation and a verified, trusted partner in that process is always key. So source credibility is often an issue. You can check things with the state of Minnesota with people who are licensed, whether it's contractor, lawyer, accountant. You can certainly check at bbb.org. And again, we always like to say that accredited business seal is just that extra layer of protection, but a lot of people who are credible to work with aren't necessarily accredited. That's not the only thing to look for. Again, the scam tracker is a good place to look. It's a fraud prevention tool. It's a reporting tool. If you have had any issues, Phil, if you hear things, anybody else there, please jump online, look at Scam Tracker, and give us the details. The more we hear from the community, the more you can serve as a source for information to sharing, not only within Dakota County and the Lakeville area, but among your, the marketplace, if you will. So we even have an app online. You can do it via your phone. And I might also say, again, I mentioned earlier, we're the great source for resources. And in fact, our Institute for Marketplace Trust is an international organization. And each year we put out a report. You can find more information about what is out there right now on the front lines. This just was published. It looked at data from 2023, and there's sections in there on what's happening with business scams. In closing, I'd like to say, spot and stop and report scams. So your vigilance is most appreciated. We hear from the marketplace first, sometimes before we hear from the FBI or the FTC. I would strongly recommend that if you are not, that you sign up for the do not call. Every time you have a phone update from your cell phone provider, sometimes those do not call. I don't know if it's how your phone is linked to the do not call registry, but I find that when I update my software in my phone, sometimes I get a lot of telemarketing calls. So register with FTC, and that they can't call you. Block those calls, block those emails that come your way. Trust your instincts. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But I think we in Minnesota have a hard time in not trusting people, or we say, I love this bid. This bid looks great. I definitely want to use your services, but first I'm going to verify. Can you provide me some, not only referrals, references, but as well provide any license information, and then spend some time doing some homework and checking out. I always say BBB is best, best source when you're inviting people into your home or business. If you have a contractor or somebody that's coming into your business life, looking at your books, looking at your building, looking at your inventory, you need to absolutely look at that second and third layer of checks and balances, because unfortunately, once you've let people into the back of the castle, your fortress is not secure. And I would say do everything that you can to protect your information. I will share with you that about 10 years ago, my husband's Social Security number was stolen from a former employer that had a security breach. And we have spent, I would say, 10 years trying to secure our own personal information. And believe it or not, the scammers filed tax returns in 27 states as a way to get tax, right? So false tax returns. And somehow it must work that they get some of those cash checks come back to the scammers, and they're able to do it before you know it. So things like filing tax returns for your business or for your personal information, they'll do it right after the first of the year. And you might not find if you're late to file, if your fiscal year ends in a funky place, you might go to file your taxes and find out, well, isn't that interesting? My tax return has already been filed. Those are some of the scary things that can happen. And so you have to protect your information. So there are various resources to check your credit reports. And again, this isn't only just because of a personal thing, but often small businesses are tied to Social Security numbers and other ways. So do everything you can to safeguard it. And I just read a great book. It's by the president of Consumer Reports, another nonprofit organization. Marta Yeto is her last name. I had the privilege of interviewing her for a presentation last month. It's a great source of information. And it even goes into some details about not only, I guess, what you should do, but some concerns on the front line like AI that is going to make our life a little bit more complicated and therefore call for us to be that much more sophisticated on the business owner end of thing. Be as vigilant as you can. So there's some resources for you. And I know I've kind of taken it from the 20,000-foot perspective, and I'd love to be able to answer some questions now for you. So I'll stop sharing.
All right. Really appreciate the information. The scams just seem to be multiplying. Like I said, my usual is Norton antivirus. Evidently, that's been expiring for the last 2 years for me. And they have a big influx. So have a lot of those, and I think a really good bit of advice I'm taking out of it is, just slow it down. They always want to speed you up. You don't panic about these things. People sometimes they'll tell you things very desperate, and people think they have to resolve it quickly without checking the details.
We as business owners are in a hurry, right? So we wear multiple hats, and we try to go as fast as we can, and we try to answer all of our calls in earnest. But if somebody calls or emails you out of the blue, I would say that's where you don't perhaps react as quickly. We tell people all the time to say, I'll call you right back, or I'll have to call you later, and then look up that company or that person online. Again, you have to just look from a number of different sources, because oftentimes we see people are really good at impersonating others. And with AI and some of the other sophisticated tools, just in procuring information about you, someone could pose as you on that line and do so. So just slow it down, stop, look, and listen, and get what you need to get before you're so inclined to respond. And I did see some hands up here. And Dan, I just happened to see your hand go up first. So I'd love to be able to answer a question for you. How can I help?
Sure. So my day job, I work for Hy-Vee, and I just more a word of advice than a comment here. That as you said, Susan, these are really sophisticated efforts. And for any business that has a retail business or anybody that might be answering the phones, this is the kind of thing they need to be very mindful of. We have a number of stores where, people call impersonating executives and say, we need you to get, $2,000 of Amazon gift cards. And, now explaining it, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but they're aggressive enough and sophisticated enough that the people have fallen for it. So I just raise that for folks because it's happening in all angles. And I appreciate the work that you with the Better Business Bureau does, Susan, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And I will tell you that the largest scam like that has been reported in, I think it's North America, but was right here in Minnesota. Upshur Smith in Maple Grove had a $52 million transaction. That you don't need high tech to impersonate a CEO. You don't need a gift card scam, although when we say that, people go, I would never do that. You would not believe what some people do in terms of wiring money or finding all sorts of ways to transfer funds that become impossible to trace. But $52 million was done in a very low tech, but very sophisticated way while the CEO was out of the office. And I would just say, you might not have $52 million, so you might not think that a scammer's coming after you, but it may be $5,200 that they're coming after, and it can happen in a blink of an eye. So stop, look, and listen. And I think I saw Anita's hand go up next, Market Bank. Hi.
Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for all the information. I want to reiterate, the fraud has been massive. And one thing that I think is being really resurrected is check fraud now. And small businesses still do a lot of business with checks as far as paying bills and not so much payroll anymore. But I would really highly encourage any small business to really watch their bank account, because a lot of checks are being stolen in the mail and then washed and come through for different amounts without the business's help and like making sure that they're looking at their account and verifying that the name on the check is valid. It's hard for us to be able to return it in the timely fashion that we need to. And so check fraud it's kind of odd and counterintuitive because everything has gone so electronic, but it has really made a massive resurgence in the last 6 months. So that and really watching accounts, not making sure that you're not giving out internet banking account information. We've seen that more on the personal side a lot, where people are sharing their logins, kind of get rich quick scams where people where it seems of lower income means are really being targeted and promised a cut of the pie if they will basically participate in check fraud, coming in and trying to deposit fraudulent checks and taking out cash then before they've cleared. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I love the idea of being able to help with the scam tracker. I didn't know that was available. We obviously file governmental reports on different scams and fraud that we're seeing, but we don't always know what happens to that. And sometimes it feels like it goes into a black hole. So being able to have another resource to help businesses is really important.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks for being on the front line. Our relationships with banks and insurance companies and accounting firms are great sources for us spreading the word. And because the scam tracker shows it spreads like viruses. Certain kinds of scams start happening in areas, geographies, and marketplaces. And sure enough, it's like the scammers hear the best way to do it, and then it just marches on down the road. And to your point, a couple of things. The things that horrify me most are and this is small businesses and for people as well, employment scams are one thing where, let's say, just happened, matter of fact, almost happened to a friend of mine's daughter. and hey, we'll get you set up. Well, you're going to be working remotely. I'm going to send you a check for, go ahead, deposit this $1,500, get yourself a laptop, get yourself set up for the home office. I'll send you a check. Matter of fact, why don't you just give me your bank number and we'll get that deposited. So, and you can go to Best Buy and get that set up, because, or the over deposit where they send you a check and say, oh, that's okay. I'll just withdraw it. We can just get that check returned. But anytime they've engaged within your checking account, or that details are shared back and forth, and they're distracting you the whole time, so you don't even realize that you're being duped into revealing that kind of information. The employment scans are really scary because you fill out an app and you put your social security number right away, and bingo, they've got everything they need to get started. And it happens so quickly that within 72 hours, those bank accounts are dry, and they know how to time it to stay just enough ahead so it might not show up in your account before you're seeing it, where they're already gone with the money, so to speak. So work with your bank. Don't hesitate. Don't sleep on it. If you have a gut feeling on your credit card or your bank, call immediately, because it's better safe than sorry. That wire transaction that I'm involved with, it's all legit. But I actually called my bank ahead of time to say, I just want to make sure that when this transaction happens, that you know it's coming. Because first of all, I don't want to look like a drug dealer when I get a lot of money in my bank account, but I also want to make sure it gets there okay. So just having, I call it high tech, high tech, soft touch.
And I will say we're asking way more questions, and it's not because we don't trust our customers, but we're seeing so much fraud that we're slowing down and asking a lot more questions to try and help people from getting scammed. So
thank you.
It might be annoying, but we're trying to do it for people's protection. So
well, and you're slowing it down so we all can go a little bit more vigilantly into the process. I saw another hand, John.
Hi, thanks, Susan. And first comment is I really appreciate the slowing down talk. I mean, as a retired police officer, I did a number of these investigations, and in almost every one, the person would look and go, I knew something just didn't seem right.
Just didn't feel right.
Yeah, I can't believe I did this. So another thing, I mean, this is a lot of technology, but 'tis a season of landscaping and construction. And that is a field that is rife with scams. You know, the person that comes out and they're going to do a project and they lay a few bricks down and then you don't see them ever again. Is there anything like a business or even an individual should be asking people when they are getting quotes for landscaping work or construction work that will help figure out if this person is legit or not? What should we be asking to do that?
So I'm going to put my colleague Julie on the spot here, because her team is the one that answers a lot of these calls. And Julie, does something come to mind to answer John's question, especially the contractors, the landscapers, and how to make sure they're legit in advance?
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, when you were asking that question, I knew you were going to point to me, Susan. So totally fine. I mean, the first thing we're always going to say is check on bbb.org. So just do your homework on the business and look at Google reviews as well. And our biggest thing is not if they have a bad Google review, but read through what their response is. So those are important. Obviously, licensing where it's appropriate for construction, landscaping, you're not going to have that issue, but doing the research. And then what I always say is just make sure you're not paying everything up front. So normally they're going to ask you to pay in a third, and get a contract. So unfortunately, so many times we'll hear from consumers who just didn't take the time and didn't ask for a contract and didn't move forward with that. So that quickly, I would say, do your research, read information, ask for stuff in writing, specifically payments, so that you understand those, and look at licensing.
So thanks, Julie. Her team is just awesome. I sit right, my office is right next to the operations center. and I hear some of these calls and through the door, and I want to encourage you, it's the low-tech stuff. Call us. That's what we exist for entirely. You have no obligation, there's no fee. We love hearing from you for exactly what Julie's describing. If it doesn't feel right, we want to know about it. And you can help us. You can have, even if you've been scammed, I will tell you the one thing that people tell us is that when they have been duped, the best thing next to trying to catch the scammers, which usually doesn't happen, you can call the FTC, you can call the Lakeville police, is then become an educator and ambassador, help others prevent with the scam prevention. I'm going to tell you something that will blow your mind right now, that industries such as asphalt and concrete and tree trimmers, somebody comes to your door and says, hey, the neighborhood here, we're putting in some asphalt in this, and if you sign up now, we'll a third off right now on the spot, because we're going to be in this neighborhood anyways, and we're doing these driveways. Well, we see so many issues relative to what John described based on those kinds of knocking on the doors. And it's not to say that the people who are in the asphalt and concrete business or the tree trimming aren't legit. They are. But the imposters that unfortunately give those industries a bad name are prevalent. And especially following a storm, you don't even want to know when people are coming through, they've got their, a chainsaw ready to go, and, they're absconding your money, maybe not even overcharging you for the business that they promise, but so they can have your check and do what Anita's declaring, and that is get access to your financial information. So again, these guys and gals are like magicians, where they morph, they go to where the opportunity is. And then lastly, I'd like to say, a tendency is when we feel we're scammed, we're embarrassed, right? We're business owners, right? We're big shots. We're making decisions all day long. And then all of a sudden you realize that you've pressed send. And rather than reacting, you go, oh, not a big deal, or I don't think this is a problem. And then it turns out to be. That's the emotion that scammers prey on. They're hoping they can buy 24, 48, 72 hours from you. Because as Anita will tell you, that's all it takes for those transactions to happen, and the money's gone. And there's nothing that the bank or the FTC or the Lakeville police can do to help you. So people go underground because they're embarrassed. I can't believe I fell for this. I can't believe I went to Target and got the gift cards. We hear that all the time. I'm just saying the IRS does not take gift cards for tax, but they do take checks, and they do take online payments. And if those conduits through which the money flows are false and you've been duped into it, you have to respond right away. Action is key, and especially with wiring. The FTC has a window where they can actually claw back some. And that's why, to Anita's point earlier, some of these processes have been slowed down. It's not that a bank is trying to be onerous or difficult to work with. They're trying to help you. They're trying to help us as a marketplace be safer in our transactions. So I get all stoked up. You can tell my enthusiasm. I'm proud to be part of BBB. I really feel that we as a business community in Minnesota stand for everything that is integral. And generally speaking, good things happen in the state of Minnesota, especially in southern Minnesota here. Buyers and sellers do trust each other. We do help each other. And that's why I say, do everything you can to arm yourself as a business owner and operator, but help us help you and others by reporting and sharing and inviting us to your meetings such as this, so that we can help other people understand how to help themselves.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Any other questions real quick? We're almost up to the hour now. So appreciate all the information. And we have the, I think the contact information is in the chat. So perfect, I appreciate it. And thank you for coming on, Susan, appreciate it.
Right. We-
Julie, appreciate everything on here, and
Thanks all. Have a great day.
If
All
you'd
right.
ever like a tour or a one-on-one consultation, again, BBB is, we're located just off of Highway 13 and 35W. We share a building with Burnsville Chamber and visit Experience Burnsville and Dakota County SCORE. So come see us. We'd love to share our resources with you and tell us more about what we can do for you. So thanks for your time today and very much for your sharing of information in the future.
sounds good. Thank you.